Today I want to tell you 20 mistakes I made on my Appalachian Trail Thru-Hike this year. Now these aren't big mistakes, they're not thru-hike ending mistakes, not anything that would take you off trail. Instead, they're kind of like the silly day-to-day mistakes I was making even as a second-time thru-hiker. So whenever I did something on trail and I thought that was kind of stupid or I shouldn't have done that, I put it in the notes section of my phone and kind of kept a running list. I think in total I have 22 on this list, ranging from my first night on trail all the way to the last day, the day that I actually did end my hike and get off. So starting at number 1, I forgot to untangle my bear line before I started my thru-hike. So I had 50 feet of rope that I used to hang my food bag in the tree. And that first night when I went to untangle it and hang my food, it was so knotted that I stood there for over 20 minutes with freezing cold fingers trying to get all the knots out. It was the most frustrating thing. It was not a good way to start my thru-hike. There was one night I camped 0.2 miles away from a really cool waterfall. So when I woke up in the morning, I decided to leave my tent and all my stuff at my campsite and hike to the waterfall to eat breakfast. I only took my food bag and my water, and I got to the waterfall, ate a breakfast, and then nature called and I really had to go to the bathroom, but I did not bring my bathroom kit with me. So that was a huge mistake. If I ever go off of trail for any amount of time, I will always take my bathroom kit with me. So my toilet paper, my hand sanitizer, all that, because you never know. Ever since that happened, I will keep my toilet paper in my fanny pack, and my fanny pack will always stay on me. One night when I finished dinner and I was putting everything in my food bag, getting ready to hang it up in a tree, I forgot a Ziploc bag full of drink mixes on the ground right outside of my tent. It was dark when I packed up, so I just didn't see it laying there. And then when I woke up the next morning, I noticed that mice completely tore it apart and all my powdered drink mixes was everywhere. So always double check that you have everything inside the food bag before you put it away. That was a stupid hiker mistake. I don't think I've ever told this story, but on my first 0 day, I took a shuttle to a grocery store so I could resupply. And when I was done, I was waiting outside the grocery store for the shuttle to come back because they had to bring hikers somewhere else and they were going to come back later and get me. So I was sitting outside the grocery store for about half an hour. And when the shuttle came to pick me up, I grabbed all of the bags of food and I got into the shuttle without realizing that I set my wallet on a ledge right outside the store. And I got back to the hostel. I didn't realize that I didn't have my wallet for like 2 hours later. I ended up calling the grocery store because I'm pretty sure I left it there. They said that they didn't see anything, no one turned anything in. So I ended up shuttling back to the grocery store to look for it myself. And lo and behold, my wallet was still sitting on the ledge right outside the grocery store, and hundreds of people must have walked by it. So I got really lucky that day, but that could have ended in a huge disaster. I made the mistake a couple times of waiting too long to book hostels, especially in the first part of the trail where the trail was definitely a lot busier, because there were hostels that I visited in 2021 that I was really excited to go to again on this thru-hike, but I would wait till like the day of to call and ask if they had availability, and most of the time the answer was no. So there were a few places that I really wanted to stay at again, but I just couldn't. So that was my fault for not planning too far ahead of time. But something I did do right on my thru-hike is drink plenty of Element to keep me hydrated. I take hydration very seriously on the trail because I tend to get headaches and migraines when I'm dehydrated, so Element has been helping a lot with that. Element is a drink mix that has a science-backed electrolyte ratio of sodium, potassium, and magnesium, and it doesn't have any sugar, so it really only has what you actually need. You don't even need to put Element in plain water. You can go on their website and find some really fun recipes. Right now, I'm making an Element cold brew. In my last video, you saw me make cold brew and an Element drink mix, and I drank both of them on my way to a hike, but I never really thought of combining the two, so we're gonna see how this tastes. So you can get this sample pack of 8 of their flavors for free with any purchase on their website when you use my link, which is drinkelement.com/Nahamsha. You can try flavors like lemon habanero, orange salt, chocolate salt. Today I used the raw unflavored one in my cold brew. If you want to try the 8 flavors in this sample pack, place an order. Again, that's drinkelement.com/Nahamsha. Free sample pack with any order. Now, this is a mistake I kept making over and over again, and that's not giving myself enough time when booking shuttles to pick me up at the end of the day. So I would usually do the math in my head, and it'd be like, oh, if I started at this time and I hiked 3 miles an hour all day and I did 20 miles, then the shuttle needs to pick me up at this time. But I need to realize that just because I can hike 3 miles an hour doesn't necessarily mean that I want to do it for 20 miles straight. So I made the mistake of just booking my shuttle way too early, and I'd find myself sprinting the last 3 miles to just make it there on time because I never wanted to keep a shuttle driver waiting. Now, I don't know why I did this, but I made the mistake of not charging my phone overnight while staying at a hotel. So I woke up the next morning and I had a dead battery, and I didn't realize until I was just packing up. So I'd have like 10 minutes to get some battery left in it, but that's just a stupid mistake. Sometimes I book hotels just because I need to charge my devices, so I don't know why I would ever forget to do that. I really should have gotten an Ingalls card right away on the thru hike because the Ingalls cards save you so much money when you're grocery shopping and doing a resupply. I've seen hikers save like 10, 15 bucks just from using an Ingalls card, and it takes just seconds to sign up for one. So I don't know why I kept putting it off. Some hostels do have Ingalls cards just laying around that you can grab when you resupply and use that. But I should have just gotten one myself. I could have saved so much money. When I would shed layers throughout the day, I would often just take off my puffy jacket or my fleece and stick it in the outside pocket of my backpack instead of opening the whole thing and putting it in and then resealing it or whatever. But there were a couple times where it started to rain and I forgot that my layers were in that outside pocket, which is not waterproof. So they did get a little damp. I would always remember within a couple minutes, but that has happened. It also has happened with my battery bank getting rained on, because sometimes if I stopped for lunch, I would charge my phone with the battery bank for a second and then just stick it in the outside pocket. Now, there's a trash port underneath my backpack, so it's a designated pocket for me to put my wrappers and trash in while I'm hiking, because I do like to eat snacks while I'm hiking throughout the day. But there were a couple times where I forgot to empty the trash port into the trash in my food bag overnight, so I'd wake up in the morning and realize that I still had the wrappers in my backpack, and that's not okay because bears and animals can still smell the wrappers. So I'm not proud of it, but I have slept with my trash in my tent a couple nights on trail. There were a few times where I was going to a town that I thought was big enough that I could rely on Uber or Lyft to get me places, to get me to a hotel or a restaurant or somewhere. But there were a few times where just I went into the Uber app and it just kept loading and loading and loading, and it never matched me with the driver. So I was let down a couple times because of that, but I never got stranded, which is a good thing. There's always enough numbers for shuttle drivers in the Far Out app. It just took a little longer than I thought it would. When I got to Waynesboro, Virginia, it was pretty late, but I still had to resupply. So from my hotel, I decided to walk to Walmart, and it was dark and it was raining, and I made the mistake of wearing all black because it was busy and I had to cross 4 lanes of traffic to get to Walmart, and there were no crosswalks. So I really should have been safe and worn my neon orange rain jacket because I felt a little sketchy. It was a very dark town. So going forth, I really should wear bright colors when walking around town at night. Now, I've heard hikers say that you don't need to carry that much food when hiking through Shenandoah National Park because of the amount of waysides and hotels and just different places where you can get food along the way. So I kind of went with it. I went into Shenandoah National Park with 1, maybe 2 days of food because I thought, oh, this is going to be great. I'm going to eat out at the restaurants every day, and I was really excited about it. But I made the mistake of not doing my own research because that was not the case. The waysides are only open during certain hours, so if you hike through after 5, you're probably not going to get food. Some of them weren't even open for the season yet. Some of them were over a mile off trail. So I really should have done the research myself and actually figured out where each wayside was going to be when they were open, how close to the trail they are, because it made it a little logistically tough in the national park. Sometimes I'd get to a hotel that didn't have guest laundry or a laundromat nearby, so I would wash my clothes in the sink. But sometimes I made the mistake because my clothes wouldn't completely dry overnight. This usually happened with my Darn Tough wool socks. Those kind of took a long time to dry. Or sometimes I wouldn't put my clothes close enough to the fan so they'd dry with the fan overnight. So a couple times I woke up with wet clothes and I just have to stand there with the hair dryer and kind of dry them myself. So I got to a campsite right after sunset and I was starving. So I set up my tent and I ate my food. But by the time it was time to put my food in the bear box, it was really dark and I had no idea where the bear box was. It was a Friday night and there were so many people at the campsite already sleeping, and I had to stumble around with my headlamp trying to find the bear box, and that's definitely something I should have done before it got pitch black. Besides leaving my Walmart at the grocery store, I have also almost left it at camp. So one morning it fell out of my fanny pack as I was packing everything up. But thank God I did do a double take at my campsite before I actually hiked away from it, and I noticed my wallet just sitting there by itself where my tent was set up. And I'm so glad I caught it because my wallet's gray and it kind of blended into the ground a little bit, but I just noticed something a little out of place and I didn't leave it there. Now, this mistake happened on both of my thru hikes, so I definitely should have learned my lesson the first time this happened. But I carried the mini bottle of Ben's DEET bug spray, and as I'm hiking and it's in my backpack, the cap comes loose. And so it started leaking on itself. It started leaking in the pocket, and you know, DEET is very strong. So when it got on the fabric of my backpack in the pocket, it just started melting everything. So in 2021, it melted all over the hip belt pocket and I had to throw it away. This year, it melted the side water bottle pocket of my backpack, and it didn't completely destroy it, so that's good. But in 2021, it did get on my Garmin InReach and start melting that, and that's what ended up causing my Garmin InReach to malfunction this year and initiate the SOS. Big mistake, very costly mistake, because those Garmin InReaches are like $400. There were a couple times where I left town without packing an extra Ziploc bag designated for trash, which made it a little tricky. I would often have to eat all the goldfish out of a little Ziploc bag and try to fit all my trash in there. So it's just a little bit of a hassle. It's so easy to just remember to take an extra Ziploc bag leaving town. I should have made it a priority to replace my hiking socks as soon as I started to see a hole forming, because I waited way too long. The holes got giant and it caused me to get so many blisters on my feet, which completely ruined a couple days of hiking for me. And yeah, that was kind of miserable. There was a point in New Hampshire where I had to go into the woods to dig a cat hole. So I got off trail, I started walking into the woods, and I thought I was far enough from the trail, but then all of a sudden I looked up and I saw a white blaze and I was on the trail again. So I found the only switchback in New Hampshire, and at that point I was running out of time, so I could only go a little further to dig my hole, and I was probably very visible to people on the trail. So I'm really happy no one walked by while I was you know. When it got to the point on the AT where it started raining every single day, the trail had so many slugs. They were all over the rocks and the trees. And as I'm hiking through New Hampshire and Maine, and I'd have to kind of like climb up the trail, so I'm like doing a little bit of rock climbing over the boulders, I'd grab a rock or a tree without looking where my hand was going, and I'd smush a slug, and then my hand would just get covered in this nasty orange gunk. So I really should have looked where I was placing my hands before I just went for it. And one of my biggest mistakes or regrets for this hike is not taking better care of my gear, especially my sleeping pad, because towards the end of the hike, when it was raining every day, it was always damp, and sometimes when I went into town, I didn't take my sleeping pad out of my backpack to lay it out and let it dry off, and that caused a lot of mold to grow on it, and it's basically trashed. So I'm probably gonna have to buy a new sleeping pad too before I go back out on trail, and it would have been so easily avoidable if I just kept it dry. So those are the mistakes I made this year on my Appalachian Trail Thru-Hike. Hopefully you can learn from them. A lot of them are just like stupid mistakes. I feel very vulnerable telling you everything I did wrong on my hike, but hopefully you can learn from them or found them somewhat entertaining. And that's gonna do it for this video. Thanks for watching.